You should always be wary of a wounded animal, because you never know when it might lash out. Greetings, loyal members. This is the Dominion War. Now, last month, the Dominion retired in the south, trying to get away from Tomalok's steamroller, and on the Calandra front, the Battle of the Salients continued, with various movements across the entire front. And this month, up in the north, the Dominion continues to send reinforcements, even taking ships away from the Calandra front. This is to protect from a potential Romulan attack. Because of their cloaking device in tandem with their quantum singularity warp cores, the Romulans have no need to attack in a direct linear fashion. They can penetrate behind enemy lines and travel through deep space. They don't need to stop to refuel or anything like that. So they can go all the way through Dominion lines and attack positions deep behind the main front line. And so this is why you can see up in the north, a position in depth is being developed with this sort of honeycomb of numerous fleets ready to intercept Romulan fleets at any point. Now, this month, that policy is now vindicated because the Romulans launch an attack. The Romulan Legion, colloquially known as the Firebirds, launches a raid on the Sheva system. Now, this raid is ultimately repulsed. The Dominion fleets close in from all four sides, and using counter-cloaking methods such as anti-proton scans are able to, foil this Romulan attempt at a raid, and the Romulans are ultimately driven back to their positions in deep space beyond the Cardassian border. But what it does demonstrate to the Dominion is that they are still very much vulnerable to a Romulan attack, and the Romulans are very much capable of launching these kinds of attacks. So this is only going to further show the Dominion that they need to be concentrating their energy up in the northern front, where these kinds of attacks are likely going to be happening more and more frequently. You have 3 Romulan fleets out on their own in deep space, and then you also have a Romulan fleet attached to the main Federation front at the northernmost point, and those are really going to be your main threat from the Romulans. The rest of the Romulan fleets are sort of scattered around and probably can't do anything too effective, or certainly you're not going to see massed Romulan action on those fronts. They're going to need the support of the other powers in order to carry out any kind of action on the other fronts, and so they're a little bit easier to predict and defend against. Now, moving down to the Chintoka front. From Chintoka, General Martok launches an attack at the Monak shipyards. Now, this too is repulsed. Martok attacks with his full fleet of the Klingon Expeditionary Force, and this force is repulsed by the Dominion defences at Monak. Now, of course, we all know he will come back and adopt a very different approach next time, but his main attack is repulsed, and that forces him to use an infiltration attack with a bird of prey. Now, this does destroy much of the shipyards, but nevertheless it shows how strong the Dominion defences in that area remain, and actually punching out of that Chintoka salient is going to be very, very difficult for the Allies. Now, further down on the Calandra front, a dramatic reversal takes place this month. The Klingon fleet at Tarsas is destroyed. Now, for context, the Klingon fleet at Tarsas was part of the Volterra pocket back when the Dominion had encircled several Klingon fleets. When the pocket was broken, the Klingons quickly went about reinforcing and resupplying these fleets, but they wanted to keep these positions because they felt that they would be important in cutting off the Dominion from Beta Zed and creating a new front line. Essentially, from Tarsas, the eventual hope was to drive down to Pacifica and Inkar, and thus split the Dominion front in two. Now, this hasn't happened because of various logistical problems, and also because there's been much more pressure building on that front from the Romulan flank, from Tomalok's task force. But this has led to the Allies in the sort of northern half, the top half of that front, to become complacent. Now, The fleet at Tarsaas did take some heavy casualties during the Battle of the Volterra Nebula, but they were able to reconstitute a lot of their strength by the breaking of the Klingon Imperial Guard. So the Klingon Imperial Guard was attacked by the Dominion. It did survive with relatively minimal casualties, but the same could not be said for the other Klingon fleets in the Volterra pocket. So of those that survived, the Imperial Guard was then broken up and dispersed among those fleets. The idea being that you take the highly experienced officers and crews of the Imperial Guard and use them to strengthen the less experienced Klingon fleets. So the Klingon fleet at Tarsaas was certainly well supplied and well up to strength, but it simply wasn't prepared for this kind of attack, particularly because they've been seeing the Dominion withdrawing strength from the Calandra front for several months, so they weren't really anticipating a counterattack, and they were set upon by 3 Cardassian orders all at once, and they were just completely crushed and unable to escape in time. And so another Klingon fleet is lost, even after they were supposedly liberated from the Volterra pocket back in January. So, yet again, the Dominion showing that they still have plenty of fight in them. On to perhaps some more good news for the Allies on the Calandra front, or the southernmost front, as we'll call it. There continues to be progress, with Tomalok's task force driving back the Dominion at Oceanius and Lemma, and now this is threatening actually to cut off Beta Zed. The Dominion position at Beta Zed is increasingly exposed and looking more and more like it's going to get isolated. Now actually it's worth mentioning that unlike before where Tomalok's task force was able to drive ahead very effectively and very quickly, this month they actually found a little bit more resistance. The Dominion actually prepared some defensive positions and were ready to receive the assault, although they were ultimately driven back because it was still a 2-on-1 attack with support in depth. But they were facing much, much stronger resistance, and if that is any indication, then the resistance will continue to increase the further and further into the Dominion's territory they push. Now, really coming to Beta Zed, you've got to start to ask the question, why is the Dominion so focused on holding this planet? It's quite an exposed position, and they would actually strengthen their own by withdrawing, gain another fleet, and be able to attack elsewhere. But they are determined to hold it for some reason. What is it about that planet or its people? Why is the Dominion so keen to hold on to Beta Zed? And that brings us to the end of the month, with the Dominion mounting several successful defences and launching a surprising and devastating counterattack, even as Tomalok's steamroller continues to advance. This month really sees the Dominion firmly on the defensive, but they've still managed to dictate the pace of combat hitherto. But now it's very clear they are outnumbered and surrounded. And let me ask you this. If you're a Cardassian, and before long it's going to be your home becoming a battlefield, just how optimistic, just how loyal to the Dominion are you going to feel then, when Romulan warbirds start raiding your planets? Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you all next time.